Honey, starting with this paycheck, we're splitting our finances. I'm sick of supporting you. My husband, Jason, dropped that bomb right in the middle of dinner. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just smiled, looked him dead in the eye, and accepted with pleasure. Little did he know, he had just signed his own warrant. And when my in-laws walked into the kitchen that Saturday, expecting their usual free feast, the scene that awaited them made them scream in absolute horror. Sarah woke up at 6 in the morning to the sharp sound of her alarm. Even though the sun hadn't come up over the Chicago skyline yet, she hated starting her day in a rush. She slipped out of bed silently so as not to wake her husband, Jason. She put on her robe and headed to the bathroom. The cold water on her face finally washed away the last bit of sleep. She was 31 years old, and for 8 of those years, she had been grinding away at a major logistics firm. She started as a regular coordinator, but now she was the team lead for international transport. Her salary was $3,500 a month, with quarterly bonuses that sometimes hit $1,500. It was a high-stress job filled with constant fires to put out, containers held up at customs, paperwork filed wrong, suppliers missing deadlines. But Sarah had a knack for making quick decisions and finding solutions in any mess. She went to the kitchen, fired up the coffee maker, and pulled the breakfast ingredients out of the fridge. Cooking was her way of decompressing after a brutal day. While she chopped vegetables or kneaded dough, her mind finally took a break from the endless calls and emails. On weekends, she could spend up to 5 hours in the kitchen experimenting with new recipes, and it gave her genuine joy. Jason stumbled into the kitchen around 7, sleepy and with his hair a mess. He worked as a design engineer at a construction firm and brought home $2,500 a month. In a city like Chicago, it was a decent, stable paycheck. When they got married 5 years ago, Sarah made her stance clear. She wasn't going to fall into traditional roles, and she had no intention of becoming a classic housewife. Jason had nodded back then, not giving it much thought. He even seemed surprised she brought it up. Funny how supportive husbands get selective memory when it comes to chores. But life happened, and Sarah ended up taking on all the housework anyway. Not because she was forced to, but because she liked it. She felt peace when the house was clean and organized, and the kitchen became her sanctuary. Jason never demanded it. He just took it for granted. Breakfast that morning was toast with tomato and artisanal prosciutto, accompanied by freshly squeezed orange juice. Jason ate in silence, scrolling through the news on his phone. Sarah finished her coffee and looked at her husband. He seemed deep in thought, but she didn't ask. Everyone has their own headspace. After breakfast, Jason was the first to leave. He had a meeting at 9. Sarah stayed behind for another half hour to wash the dishes, wipe down the table, and start a load of laundry. She did it all mechanically, quickly, and effortlessly. The day at the office was the usual chaos. A supplier from China delayed a shipment of parts, forcing her to scramble for alternative transport routes. 3 video conferences, dozens of emails, and a headache of coordinating documents with the customs broker later. The problem was solved just in time for lunch. Mr. Martinez, her director, simply nodded with satisfaction. He was no longer surprised by Sarah's ability to pull miracles out of thin air. In the afternoon, she stopped at Whole Foods near their apartment. Tomorrow was Saturday, the day Jason's family came over. It was a ritual established 3 years ago. It all started when Jason's brother Mike had his 3rd kid. Mike was 38 and his wife Ashley was 34. Their boys were born 2 years apart, and now the sons were 8 and the daughter was 4. Ashley always looked exhausted dealing with them 24/7, and Mike was always busy with work. That was when Jason and Mike's mother, Linda, proposed that they all gather every Saturday at Sarah and Jason's place. Their apartment was bigger, and Sarah cooked like a pro, so Ashley could get a break from the kitchen at least 1 day a week. Sarah didn't object. She liked cooking for a crowd, seeing their satisfied faces, and getting a few compliments. She filled the shopping cart. 2 whole chickens for roasting, 2 pounds of beef for a brisket stew, 3 types of fresh vegetables, a large bag of mixed greens, heavy cream, 3 types of cheese, premium flour for homemade crab cakes, and fruit-like apples, pears, and grapes. For dessert, raspberries and blueberries, chocolate for the glaze, sour cream, eggs, and milk. At the register, the total came to $124, a considerable sum. Sarah paid with her card and tucked the receipt into a separate pocket of her wallet. She had a habit of keeping all receipts and, once a month, organizing her expenses in a spreadsheet. It wasn't about being penny pinching, she just liked knowing where her money went. It gave her a sense of control. When she got home, Jason was already sitting on the sofa with his laptop on his knees. Sarah hauled the heavy bags into the kitchen and started organizing the groceries. Her husband peeked into the kitchen and glanced at the food covering the counter. "My parents are coming tomorrow, right?" "Yes, and Mike, Ashley, and the kids." "You bought a lot." "There are 7 of them, 9 with us. And besides, they usually take leftovers for the whole week." Jason nodded and went back to his laptop. Sarah, while putting things away in the pantry, mentally planned tomorrow's menu. First, get the chicken in the oven. It would take about 2 hours. While that cooks, I'll prep the beef stew, then the salads, the crab cakes, and finally, the dessert. Saturday started early. By 8 in the morning, Sarah was already in the kitchen with her apron on, prepping the chickens. She was listening to soft jazz, which helped her focus. She poured herself a large cup of coffee and dove into the culinary process. She stuffed the chickens with sautéed mushrooms, onions, cheese, and herbs. On the outside, she rubbed them with a spice mix and sour cream, wrapped them in foil, and slid them into the oven. While they roasted, she prepped the stew, searing the meat and putting it in a large pot with red wine, carrots, potatoes, and bay leaves. Sarah moved with speed and skill. Her hands remembered every motion. Jason appeared in the kitchen around 11, still sleepy, in pajamas and a wrinkled t-shirt. 3 pots were already simmering on the stove, and a delicious aroma was wafting from the oven. On the table, there was a mountain of chopped vegetables for the salad. The smell was irresistible. "Need help with anything?" "Can you set the table in the dining room? The new tablecloth is in the closet, top shelf." He obediently went to get the plates and silverware. Sarah was whipping cream for the fruit tart she was making for dessert. Just as she was placing the last raspberries on the tart, the intercom buzzed. The clock struck 1 sharp. Her in-laws always arrived on time. The first to walk in was her mother-in-law, Linda, a 58-year-old woman with a sturdy build, short hair, and a perpetually dissatisfied expression. She was carrying a large tote bag in her hand. Sarah knew that inside was a collection of empty Tupperware containers to take food home. Behind her came Mike, tall, thin, and looking tired, followed by Ashley, pale with dark circles under her eyes, and the 3 kids. The boys ran straight to the playroom while the little girl clung to her mother's skirt. Sarah started bringing the platters of food to the table, the roasted chickens, skin golden and dripping with aromatic juices, the beef stew with a thick, appetizing sauce, a huge mixed salad with goat cheese and walnuts, homemade crab cakes still hot, freshly baked bread, and for dessert, a fruit tart so beautiful it was a shame to eat it. Linda did a lap around the table, inspecting every dish like she was a judge on a cooking show. You made an effort. The chicken looks nice and golden, but the brisket should be a little more tender, and the potato salad lacks a bit of salt. But, well, it's edible." Sarah smiled without saying anything. I swear, that woman could find a flaw in a diamond if she looked hard enough. Her mother-in-law always found something to critique. It was her trademark. First, a stingy compliment, inevitably followed by a criticism. Before, it didn't bother her, but today, for some reason, she felt a sting. Lunch was loud and long. The kids ran between rooms and had to be called 10 times to sit at the table. The little girl refused to eat anything but bread. The adults talked about their stuff. Mike complained about difficulties at work. His boss was asking for the impossible. Deadlines were approaching, and his team wasn't cutting it. Ashley whispered about a conflict with the daycare teacher, who, according to her, wasn't watching the kids well enough. Linda lamented her pension of $600. "You can't live on this money," she said. "Prices go up every day." Jason remained mostly silent, adding a neutral comment every now and then. Sarah was also quiet, observing them. She liked seeing people enjoy the food she prepared, but today, that pleasure wasn't the same. After lunch, when everyone was stuffed and leaning back in their chairs, Linda, as usual, pulled the Tupperware out of her bag. They were plastic containers, big and small. She started methodically packing the leftovers. Half a chicken in one container, all the remaining stew in another, all the crab cakes, half the salad, the leftover bread. Sarah watched in silence as the food, in which she had invested 5 hours and over $120, was packed up to leave. Before, it seemed normal to her. She thought it was better for the family to take it than for it to be thrown away. With 3 kids, they would have food for the whole week. But today, watching her mother-in-law fill the containers, she felt a slight irritation. Was it the comment about the beef? Or the critique of the salad? Or simply the accumulation of 3 years? The family left around 6 in the evening. Jason helped clear the table and load the dishwasher. Sarah wiped down the counter and put the little that was left in the fridge, barely enough for her and Jason to have dinner. That night, when everything was in order and she could finally rest, Sarah sat at her computer and opened the expense file she had been keeping for years. It was a habit she picked up in college when money was tight and she had to watch every penny. She logged the $124 from today's shopping. Then, out of pure curiosity, she started reviewing the sheets from previous months, looking at the costs of the weekend meals. $105, $110, $125, $118, $135. The numbers flashed before her eyes. Sarah opened the calculator and started adding up. In the last year, she had spent over $6,000 just on weekend meals for Jason's family. She leaned back in her chair, staring at the screen. Over $6,000. That number hit me harder than a physical slap. I wasn't a wife, I was a free catering service, and that was without counting the regular groceries for the 2 of them, the bills, cleaning products, clothes, or birthday and Christmas gifts. Sarah had never stopped to calculate exactly how much she spent specifically on Jason's family. She simply bought, cooked, and enjoyed the process. But now, seeing that figure in black and white, something shifted inside her. She didn't feel rage or resentment. Sarah wasn't one to get angry easily. She considered it inefficient and a waste of energy, but she had the strange sensation that the balance had broken. She invested money, time, and effort, and in return, she received critiques about the tenderness of a brisket. But that was just a thought. Sarah closed the file, stretched to loosen her back, and got up to make a light dinner for herself and Jason. A salad with the chicken pieces that had been left over from lunch. Jason was in the living room watching the game. She made herself some herbal tea and sat next to him. The day passed as usual. Nothing special happened. The following week, Sarah noticed that Jason was walking around deep in thought. He would come home from work, eat dinner in silence, and then sit with his phone, frowning and reading something for long periods. Sarah didn't pay him much attention. Everyone has their own worries. Wednesday night, while they were eating dinner, Jason spoke suddenly. "Today, Miller told me an interesting story." "Miller, a new guy?" "He joined our department a month ago. He's divorced, maybe 40-something. Sarah nodded without stopping eating her salad. "And what did he tell you?" "He was talking about his divorce. When dividing the assets, his wife kept half the condo, even though she hadn't worked in 5 years, just stayed at home. And on top of that, she wanted to ask him for alimony for herself. Can you imagine? Not child support, but for her. It can happen. He says his biggest mistake was having a joint bank account. Since all the money was together, when they divorced, the judge ruled she was entitled to half of everything." Sarah looked up from her plate and looked at her husband. "Oh, Jason, you're playing chess, but you don't even know how the pieces move. And why are you telling me this?" He was just sharing his experience. He says if they had managed their money separately, the divorce would have been much simpler. Each with their own money? She couldn't have claimed anything from him. I see. In fact, he thinks that nowadays it's better for couples to manage their money separately. Everyone is responsible for their own. You know what you spend and where. No lack of control or arguments. Sarah finished her salad in silence and wiped her mouth with her napkin. "Jason, if you want to tell me something, tell me directly. Not through your colleagues' stories. No, it's just a reflection I had." "Okay." She got up and took her plate to the kitchen. If he wasn't ready to talk about it directly, she wasn't going to force him. Sarah didn't like hints or assumptions. If he wanted to say something, he would say it, and if not, then not. The next day, Thursday, Jason came home just as thoughtful. Sarah was preparing baked salmon with lemon and rosemary for dinner. He sat at the kitchen table, phone in hand, frowning while reading something. Walking past him, Sarah glanced at the screen. It was an article about financial independence in marriage. She said nothing and kept cooking. After dinner, Jason went to the living room and she washed the dishes. Through the window reflection, she saw him sitting on the sofa, typing something into the search bar of his laptop. Sarah knew her husband was heading toward something. An idea was growing in his head and soon he would verbalize it. But she didn't plan to rush him. She would let him reach his own conclusions and express them himself. Friday passed calmly. Sarah had to stay late at the office to finish the monthly report she had to send to the New York headquarters. She got home exhausted around 10 at night. Jason heated up some leftover lasagna from lunch for her. They ate in silence in front of the TV and went to bed early. Saturday morning started again with preparations to receive the family. Sarah got up at 8, had a coffee, and went to the market for fresh fish. She had decided to make salt-crusted sea bass. She had wanted to try that recipe for a long time. She walked through the market stalls choosing the freshest fish. The sea bass was expensive, $25 a pound. She bought a piece nearly 4 pounds. She also bought vegetables, herbs, cheese, and cream. In total, she spent $115. Back home, she started her magic in the kitchen. She cleaned the sea bass, stuffed it with lemon slices and dill, and covered it completely with a thick layer of damp, coarse salt. She put it in the oven. As a side, she prepared a potato gratin with meat and mushrooms, 3 types of salad, and homemade lemonade with fresh lemon and mint. At 1 in the afternoon, the table was perfectly set. The family arrived on time. Linda walked straight into the kitchen, sniffing the air. "Smells like fish. Did you make sea bass? With how expensive it is." Sarah didn't answer, busy transferring one of the salads to a nice bowl. Her mother-in-law stood there for a moment and then went to the living room. The meal started as usual. Everyone praised the fish. The sea bass was exquisite, tender, juicy, and with a delicate taste of the sea. Even the kids ate with gusto. Ashley asked for the recipe. Mike ate in silence, but his expression was pure satisfaction. Of course, Linda pointed out that the sauce on the gratin could have been thicker and that the lemonade had too much lemon, but that was already a tradition. Her mother-in-law was incapable of finishing a meal without a criticism. Sarah listened to her, thinking she had spent nearly $115 and 5 hours on this meal. And in exchange, she received a comment about the consistency of a sauce. When everyone had finished, even dessert, Linda reached into her bag to pull out her Tupperware. But before she started packing the food, she suddenly turned to Sarah. "Hey, Sarah, did you know that now many young couples manage their money separately?" Sarah, who was just collecting empty plates, stopped and stared at her mother-in-law. "Money separately?" "Yes, everyone manages their own money. They say it's very convenient." "Convenient for who?" "For both. Think about it. If a couple shares money, it's easy for conflicts to arise. One spends more, the other less, and the reproaches start. If everyone manages their own, everyone is responsible and there are no fights." Sarah slowly set the stack of plates on the table. "Where did you read that?" "On the internet. There are many articles about financial independence in marriage. I sent one to Jason and he told me he had read it." "Right, son?" Jason, sitting at the other end of the table, blushed and nodded. Sarah smiled without saying anything. Her mind was cold and clear. Suddenly, she understood the whole picture. Linda had planted the idea in Jason's head. He had mulled it over, consulted with his divorced colleague, and read articles. And now, her mother-in-law was bringing it up in front of everyone to push the situation forward. "Ah, I see," was all Sarah said. Linda, encouraged by her daughter-in-law's apparent lack of opposition, continued. "I read a very good article that said the joint account is a relic of the past. Before, since women didn't work and stayed home, money was pooled. But now, if you all work, isn't it logical for everyone to be financially independent? It's modern, do you understand?" "Yes, very modern," agreed Sarah. Her mother-in-law, expecting more enthusiasm, didn't stop. "You, Sarah, you also work and earn your money. Why don't you and Jason try it? Each with their money without having to explain to anyone. It's freedom." Sarah nodded, picked up the plates, and headed to the kitchen. Behind her back, she heard Linda, with a satisfied expression, start filling the Tupperware. A whole sea bass? All the gratin? 2 of the 3 salads? And all the lemonade? food for the whole week for Mike's family? The family left late. Jason cleared the table in silence while Sarah loaded the dishwasher, also in silence. They didn't speak. Each was immersed in their thoughts. When the kitchen was cleaned up, Sarah went to her home office, turned on the computer, and opened the folder with her financial documents. She pulled all the receipts from the last year out of a box. She spread them out in front of her. She opened her banking app and downloaded all credit card statements, and she started calculating. Weekend meals for Jason's family. $6,000 a year just in ingredients. Regular groceries for the two of them. An average of $500 a month. $6,000 a year. Bills. Electricity, water, gas, internet. About $200 a month. $2,400 a year. To split between two. $1,200 each. Cleaning products and others. About $80 a month. Almost $1,000 a year. Clothing. Sarah dressed simply but with quality clothes. She didn't buy often, but when she did, it was to last. About $1,500 a year. Gifts for the family. For her mother-in-law's birthday, she usually gave a gift of about $100. For Mike, $100. For Ashley, $50. For each of the three kids, $30. During the holidays and birthdays, more gifts. Adding gifts for her own parents, the annual figure hovered around $2,000. Sarah created a detailed table, breaking everything down by categories and inputting the amounts. Then she looked at the total. Of her $3,500 salary, almost everything went to common expenses. She had about $300 or $400 left that she spent on coffees with friends, cosmetics, and small personal treats. Jason. Of his $2,500, he only contributed about $1,200 to the joint account. Half the bills, $100, and sometimes $200 or $300 for groceries when Sarah asked him. Very occasionally he bought some large appliance like a microwave or a vacuum, but that was once or twice a year. The rest, more than $1,300, he spent on himself, on his gadgets, which he loved. Every 6 months he bought a new phone or a smartwatch. On Fridays, he met his friends to watch the game and have some beers, spending about $40 each time. And he also helped his mother, who constantly asked him for money because her pension wasn't enough, whether to fix a blind or simply because she ran out. Sarah saved the table and closed the laptop. She got up, stretched, and went to the kitchen to make herself some herbal tea. She sat by the window, watching the city lights. Manage money separately. Modern. Everyone responsible for their own. It was an interesting idea, and it would be even more interesting to see how long Jason lasted when she actually accepted. Sarah sipped her tea and smiled. She wasn't angry or hurt. She simply thought she was about to start a fascinating experiment, and the results would be very revealing. The following week, Jason seemed even more thoughtful. Several times he tried to say something but backed out. Sarah watched him with the curiosity of a scientist studying a lab subject before a crucial experiment. Tuesday night, he brought up the topic of his colleague Miller again. "Hey, Miller showed me an article today about spousal financial independence that was very convincing. It said that when a couple shares money, often one of them starts to feel that the other is taking advantage. That one works to bring money to the family, and the other just benefits from it." Sarah, who was cutting tomatoes for the salad, didn't look up from the cutting board. "Have you felt that between us?" "No, of course not, but in theory, it could happen." "In theory, lots of things can happen. In practice, what's the problem?" Jason fell silent. Sarah knew he wanted to continue, but didn't know how. She didn't help him. She let him organize his thoughts and express them himself. Wednesday, he got home earlier than usual. Sarah hadn't returned from a meeting with a supplier yet. When she arrived around 8 in the evening, Jason was on the sofa with his laptop, clearly waiting for something. Sarah made a quick dinner. Rice with garlic shrimp. They dined in silence. Afterward, she went to shower. When she came out, Jason was still on the sofa, but without the laptop. He was just sitting, fiddling with a cushion. "Sarah, we need to talk." She sat in the armchair opposite, adjusting her bathrobe. Her hair was still damp from the shower. She looked at her husband in silence, waiting. "I've been thinking a lot lately about our life, about how we live, and also about money." Sarah remained silent. "And I think we need to make some changes in how we manage our budget." "What changes?" Jason swallowed hard and rubbed between his eyebrows. Sarah knew that gesture. He did it when he was nervous. I think we should start managing our money separately. It's more modern, fairer. Everyone is responsible for their own, and that way we eliminate many potential conflicts. Have we had conflicts over money? No, but we could have them in the future. I see. So, you want us to manage money separately to avoid conflicts that don't exist, but theoretically could exist. Jason stammered. Well, yes. And besides, it gives freedom. Everyone spends their money how they want, without having to explain. When have I asked you for explanations? No, but… Then, what do you need that freedom for? Jason stayed quiet for a moment, and then, as if fearing he'd change his mind, he blurted it out. Honey, starting with this paycheck, we're splitting our finances. I'm sick of supporting you. Silence fell. Sarah looked at her husband without changing her expression. There was no pain, no rage, no surprise inside her, just a cold understanding. Finally, it had happened. Jason had said the words that had been tormenting him for weeks. She smiled slowly. Jason tensed, waiting for an explosion. That is an excellent idea, said Sarah calmly. What? That it's an excellent idea. I totally agree with your proposal. Jason's jaw dropped. His eyes went wide as saucers. You agree? Of course. Managing money separately is very modern and fair. Everyone is responsible for their own. It's equitable, don't you think? Yes, sure. So let's start tomorrow. There's no reason to wait. Jason sat there, mouth open. He had clearly prepared for a fight, for tears, for reproaches. He had rehearsed arguments and answers, and what he had received was immediate and enthusiastic agreement. You really don't mind? Why would I mind? You're absolutely right. Everyone should be financially independent. Tomorrow, a new life starts. I'm glad you proposed it. Sarah got up. She walked over to him and kissed him on the cheek. Good night, honey. I'm up early tomorrow. She went to the bedroom, leaving Jason on the sofa, completely bewildered. He didn't know whether to be happy or worried. He didn't expect that reaction at all. Sarah lay in bed and closed her eyes. She felt calm and cold. Jason wanted to manage money separately. Well, he would get it, with all its consequences. Tomorrow, a new life would begin, and it would be very interesting. Sarah wasn't angry. She wasn't a woman to put up with things. She was a woman of action, cold, calculating, and efficient. And Jason would soon realize he had gotten exactly what he asked for, without omitting a single comma. Thursday started differently. Sarah got up at 6, like always. She showered in silence, went back to the bedroom, dressed in her work suit and fixed her hair. Jason was still sleeping, occupying his half of the bed. In the kitchen, she turned on the coffee maker and took food out of the fridge, but not the ingredients for a breakfast for two. Today, she was cooking only for herself. She cracked 3 eggs into a bowl, beat them with a splash of milk and a pinch of salt, and poured them into a hot pan. While the omelet cooked, she sliced an avocado and placed it on a piece of whole wheat toast. On top, she put smoked salmon she had bought on the way home yesterday. She squeezed half a grapefruit, and with her plate, her coffee cup, and her tablet, she sat at the table. She checked work emails and replied to a couple of urgent messages. She ate slowly, savoring every bite. The avocado was perfectly ripe and the salmon melted in her mouth. Revenge tastes best with smoked salmon and zero guilt. Jason came down to the kitchen around 7 and stopped in the doorway, seeing the table set for only one person. Good morning. Good morning, replied Sarah without looking up from the screen. Jason walked to the table and sat opposite. He looked at her breakfast and then his own empty spot at the table. And my breakfast? Sarah raised her head and looked at him calmly. Yours, you make yourself. Separate management, remember? Everyone takes care of their own meals. Are you serious? Totally. Yesterday you proposed yourself that everyone be responsible for their own. I cook for me with my money. You cook for you with your money. It's logical. Jason opened his mouth and closed it again. He got up, went to the fridge, and opened it wide. On the shelves were containers and food, and each one of them had a bright pink sticker with the word Sarah written in capital letters. What is this? Have you labeled everything? Of course. This is my food bought with my money. Separate management demands physical separation. Your food, you buy it yourself, whenever you want. If you have time now or if not. After work. As you prefer. Sarah? Are you joking? No, I'm just following the rules you set last night yourself. Separate management means individual responsibility. Or did you mean something else? Jason looked at her in silence. Sarah finished her coffee calmly and put the tablet in her purse. She got up, took her plate to the sink, washed it along with the cup and fork, dried it, and put it away. Have a good day, she said, passing by and left the kitchen. Jason stood in the middle of the kitchen. He opened the fridge again, looking with desperation at the labels. He grabbed a bottle of water that didn't have a sticker, poured himself a glass, drank it in one gulp, grabbed his jacket, and left the apartment, slamming the door. From the garage, sitting in her car, Sarah heard the slam and smiled. She started the engine and headed to work. The day went as usual. There were no big problems and everything was resolved quickly. At lunch, Sarah went to a nice restaurant near the office and ordered a salad with tiger prawns and a glass of white wine. She spent $25, but she didn't regret it at all. The food was excellent. After lunch, she opened the banking app on her phone and created a new savings account. She named it Emergency Fund and transferred $1,000, a part of her salary. It would be her personal safety net just in case. Jason knew nothing about that account, nor did he have to know. Separate management. In the afternoon, Sarah stopped at the supermarket. She grabbed a cart and walked the aisles, slowly choosing products, but not the ones she usually bought for the family. Today, she bought only what she liked. Red prawns, which Jason hated because he said they were expensive bugs. A pound for $40. 5 perfectly ripe avocados, which Jason refused to eat because he called them flavorless grass. A wedge of expensive blue cheese, which made Jason's stomach turn just by smelling it. A fillet of fresh, beautiful sea bass. Green asparagus spears. A tub of raspberries and another of blueberries. 3 bars of Belgian chocolate. A good bottle of Albarino wine. Capsules of her favorite coffee. Extra virgin olive oil from an expensive brand. A chunk of Parmesan. Also, she bought fresh vegetables, herbs, fruit, brand-name yogurts, and mineral water in glass bottles. At the register, the total was $158, a considerable sum. Sarah paid without hesitation. It was her money and she spent it on herself. When she got home, Jason was already there, as he had promised. He was sitting on the sofa with a grumpy face, looking at his phone. Sarah passed him with the heavy bags and went to the kitchen. He didn't get up to help her. She started putting away the groceries. The prawns and fish went to the freezer in a top drawer she didn't use before. She stuck a flashy label with her name on the bags. The avocado, cheese, vegetables, and berries went to a separate shelf in the fridge, all labeled. Same with the chocolate, coffee, and expensive oil. She pulled out a small cabinet with shelves she had bought on the way at a hardware store. She assembled it right there in the kitchen, placed it in a corner, and stored in it the products that didn't need refrigeration. She closed the door and put a small padlock on it, the key she wore on a fine chain hanging from her neck. Just then, Jason entered the kitchen. He saw the cabinet with the padlock and stared at it. "And what is this?" "My personal pantry, with a padlock so no one eats by mistake what isn't theirs." "Seriously?" "Separate management demands a clear division. I don't want misunderstandings." "Sarah, have you lost your mind?" "On the contrary. Did you buy something for dinner?" Jason stayed quiet. He had stopped at the supermarket after work, but had frozen in the middle of an aisle, not knowing what to buy. In the end, he grabbed the most basic stuff. A bag of frozen dumplings, sliced bread, butter, cheap hot dogs, and mayonnaise. He spent about $10. All that was now on the bottom shelf of the fridge, looking sad and lonely. Sarah took the prawns out of the freezer to thaw. Meanwhile, she sliced the avocado, some cherry tomatoes, lettuce, and added arugula. She sautéed the prawns in olive oil with garlic and a splash of lemon. She placed them over the lettuce, added the avocado and tomatoes. She dressed the salad with a vinaigrette of oil, lemon, and mustard, and grated a little Parmesan on top. She poured herself a glass of white wine, put the salad on a tray, put on her headphones with music, and sat at the table to have dinner. She savored every bite. Meanwhile, Jason was in front of the stove, trying to boil his dumplings. He threw them into boiling water, stirred them, and stared at the pot without understanding. 10 minutes later, he fished them out with a slotted spoon. They were overcooked, the dough soggy and sticky. He put that shapeless mass on a plate and squirted mayonnaise on top. He sat with his fork in front of the TV in the living room and started chewing that rubbery mass in silence. Sarah finished her salad and washed her plate. She left the dirty pot, the slotted spoon, and his plate in the sink. She grabbed a book and settled into the armchair in the living room. Jason looked at her. Then he looked at his empty plate. Then the sink with the dirty dishes. And he got up to scrub. He spent 15 minutes making noise and swearing under his breath. When he came back, he collapsed on the sofa and engrossed himself in his phone. They went to bed late, each on one edge of the bed, giving each other their backs. Friday started with the same script. Sarah made herself oatmeal with berries and nuts, fresh juice, and coffee. Jason walked into the kitchen, looked at her plate, and then the fridge. On the bottom shelf were his provisions: sliced bread, butter, hot dogs. He spread butter on the bread, put a hot dog on top, and chewed the dry sandwich, washing it down with water. Sarah finished, washed her things, and went to work. Jason watched her leave while finishing his glass of water. That day, Sarah had her annual performance review at work. Mr. Martinez called her into his office. They discussed her results for half an hour, and they were excellent. Sarah got the highest rating and an extra bonus of $1,500. She left the office satisfied. $1,500 was a good sum. She would transfer it to her new savings account. At noon, she went to lunch with her colleague Laura to a restaurant. She ordered a sirloin with grilled vegetables. Laura, pasta with seafood. They ate while talking about work and plans for the weekend. "And how are things at home?" Laura asked. "Interesting," Sarah smiled. "What do you mean?" "Jason proposed we manage money separately, and I accepted." Laura almost choked on her pasta and started coughing. "What? Separate money?" "Yes. Since yesterday, everyone is responsible for their own." "And how's it going?" "Great. I cook only for me. I buy only my food, and he does the same. Let's see how long he lasts." Laura burst out laughing. "You are incredible. I love it. And how long has he lasted?" 2 days. Yesterday he had soggy dumplings for dinner, and today he had a dry, cheap hot dog sandwich for breakfast. "And you?" "Me? Prawns, avocado, salmon, expensive cheese. All those things I didn't buy before because he didn't like them. Well done. Let's see if he learns." They finished eating and had coffee. Sarah paid $42 for her share. It was fine. Before, to save money, she rarely went to such expensive restaurants. Now she didn't have to save. All her money was just for her. In the afternoon, she passed by the supermarket again and bought fresh oysters. She had always wanted to try preparing them at home. She also bought a fancy French baguette, camembert cheese, figs, and honey. She spent $65. When she got home, Jason was on the sofa looking hungry and angry. He had eaten the daily special at the company cafeteria for $8. Bland, greasy, and it had sat wrong. His stomach had hurt all afternoon. Sarah walked into the kitchen with the bags. Jason followed her with his gaze but didn't move from his spot. She started preparing her dinner. She shucked the oysters with a special knife she had also bought. She placed them on a plate with crushed ice and sprinkled them with lemon juice. She sliced the baguette thinly and toasted it lightly in the oven. She put the camembert on a plate with the figs and honey on the side. She poured herself a glass of white wine, sat at the kitchen table, and put on soft music. She tasted an oyster, smooth with the taste of the sea. A sip of wine. Perfect. Jason walked into the kitchen and saw the scene. The oysters on ice, the cheese, the glass of wine, and he was starving. In the fridge, there was only sliced bread and hot dogs, which he was already sick of. "Sarah," she looked up from her plate. "Tell me, can we stop with this already?" "Stop with what?" "With all this, the separate management thing. Let's go back to how we were before." "Jason, it's only been 2 days. You proposed it yourself. You said it was modern and fair. I didn't think you would take it so literally." "And how did you want me to take it? You proposed separate management and I accepted. Now we manage our money separately. Everyone is responsible for their own." "That wasn't what I meant." "Then what did you mean?" Jason opened his mouth but closed it. He couldn't find an answer. He turned around and left the kitchen. Sarah finished her wine and oysters. She washed her things and went to the living room to watch a show. Jason was on the sofa, looking grumpy and hungry. After a while, he got up and went to the kitchen. She heard sounds of pans and a burnt smell. 20 minutes later, he came back with a plate of fried eggs that looked like charcoal. He started eating them with a frown. Saturday. A day where normally Sarah would have gotten up early to start preparing food for the family, but today she got up at 10. She stayed in bed looking at her phone, scrolling through social media. There was no rush. Jason also woke up late, around 11. He walked out to the living room, stretched and yawned, and suddenly he remembered. "Sarah, my parents are coming today." Sarah was lying on the sofa reading a book. "Yes, I remember." "Are you going to cook?" "No." Jason froze in the middle of the room. "What do you mean, no?" "That we manage money separately. I don't cook for guests. Your parents are your responsibility. If you want to feed them, you cook or order takeout." "Sarah, you can't do this." "Why not? It's your family. Before we had a joint account and I fed them with our common money. Now we have separate budgets. So if you want to feed your parents, use your money. But you've always cooked." "The key word isn't always. It's before. Now the rules have changed. The rules you set." Jason grabbed his phone and ran to the balcony. Sarah heard snippets of the conversation. He was trying to convince his mother to cancel the visit, or at least postpone it. But Linda stood firm. They were already on their way. They would arrive in an hour. He came back from the balcony, face pale. "They're coming. What do I do?" "I already told you. Cook or order food. You still have time." "Sarah, please, advise me something. I've never cooked for so many people." "Internet is full of recipes. Or order food from a restaurant. Surely there's one that delivers in an hour." "But that's expensive. Cooking yourself is cheaper." "Choose." Jason wandered around the apartment for a moment. He grabbed his jacket and ran out. Sarah heard the front door slam, and then the sound of his car starting. She kept reading her book calmly. 40 minutes later, Jason came back loaded with huge bags. He ran into the kitchen and started dumping their contents on the table chaotically. Prepared salads from the supermarket in plastic containers, 3 frozen pizzas, frozen chicken wings, frozen fries, a tray of packaged sushi, and a slice of cake. He turned on the oven to max power and started shoving everything in at once. The pizzas on one tray, the wings on another, the fries on a third, all together. Sarah walked into the kitchen for a glass of water. She saw the chaos, smiled, and left. Jason was spinning like a top, opening and closing the oven. Some things were burning, others were staying raw. Exactly at 1, the doorbell rang. Sarah opened it. At the door was Linda with her bag of Tupperware, Mike, Ashley, and the 3 kids. Her mother-in-law walked in, wrinkling her nose. "What a weird smell. Sarah, what did you cook?" "Nothing. Hello, come in." Linda looked at her daughter-in-law as if she didn't understand her and went into the living room. She saw Sarah sitting back on the sofa with her book. "But you are reading a book on a Saturday with guests in the house?" "Yes, I'm reading. It's a very interesting book. Come in and sit down." The family went into the living room and sat on the sofas. The kids ran to the playroom. Mike and Ashley looked at each other. Normally, upon their arrival, the table would already be set. Today, the dining room was empty. Jason ran out of the kitchen, sweating and red-faced. "It's ready. Everything is ready. I'm going to set the table." He started bringing plates, the salads in their original plastic containers without even transferring them to a bowl. The pizzas, half burnt and half raw. The wings, some charred and others with the inside still frozen. The fries stuck in a block, the sushi falling apart with rice scattered everywhere. He placed it all on the table. Linda watched the scene, horrified. "Son, did you cook this?" "Well, I bought it and heated it. Sarah didn't cook." The mother-in-law turned to her daughter-in-law. "Why?" Sarah looked up from the book and looked at her mother-in-law calmly. "Because we manage money separately, remember? 3 weeks ago you told me yourself how convenient it was. Jason accepted your advice. Now everyone is responsible for their own. I cook for me with my money, and if Jason wants to invite people, he cooks with his money. But if we are family..." You are Jason's family, and he can spend whatever he wants on you, with his money. I don't object, but my money is my money. Linda opened her mouth but couldn't find the words. Mike smiled quietly. Ashley bit her lip not to laugh. The meal began in a tense silence. Everyone sat at the table reluctantly. The salad was tasteless, supermarket quality, with questionable mayonnaise. The pizza was bitter from being burnt. The wings were rubbery. The fries? A cold brick inside. The sushi fell apart and was impossible to eat. The kids refused to try it. The little girl burst into tears. She wanted real food, like always. Ashley tried to calm her, but the girl cried at the top of her lungs. Linda sat stone-faced, barely trying a bite. Mike chewed in silence, frowning. Ashley only drank water. 20 minutes later, everyone stopped pretending they were eating. They were simply sitting in an awkward silence. Normally, after the meal would come dessert, coffee, and a long chat. Today, everyone was quiet. Finally, Linda couldn't take it anymore. Jason, do you want to explain to me what the hell is going on here? Jason hesitated, shifting in his chair. Mom, it's just that Sarah and I have decided to manage money separately. Everyone is responsible for their own. And why have you done that nonsense? It's modern, fair. You said it yourself. The mother-in-law's face turned red. I didn't mean this. Then what did you mean? Sarah intervened, closing her book. Could you explain it to me? She got up, approached the table, and sat in an empty chair. Linda, 3 weeks ago you talked to me about separate management. You told me it was comfortable, modern, and fair. Jason listened to you. Now we manage our money separately. What is the problem? The problem is that you are making a fool of yourself, leaving your husband without eating and refusing to cook for the family. I don't leave anyone without eating. Jason is an adult and can cook for himself, order food, or buy it ready-made. He has money and capacity to do it. But you are his wife. You have obligations. My obligations as a wife do not include feeding my husband's relatives for free every Saturday. I work, I earn my money, and I pay my share of the expenses. Just like Jason, we are equals, or do you consider that we are not? Linda's face turned purple. Have you always been so cold? No. Before I cooked for you with pleasure because I thought we were a family. But since you proposed separate management, we are no longer a family. We are individuals responsible for ourselves. Suddenly, Mike let out a short, dry laugh. Jason, Sarah is right. Mike! Exclaimed his mother indignantly. Mom, drop it. Mom, Sarah is totally right. We've gotten used to coming here to eat for free at the expense of Sarah's money and work. She has spent a fortune and a ton of time on us, and on top of that, we took Tupperware full for the whole week. We've been freeloaders. Ashley nodded in silence. Your brother is right. I always felt bad taking so much food, but you said it was normal and that Sarah didn't mind. And I didn't mind, said Sarah. While our budget was joint, now that it's separate, the rules have changed. Linda kept silent, lips pressed tight. Suddenly, she got up and grabbed her bag. We're leaving. Kids, let's go. Mike and Ashley also got up. They gathered the kids and got dressed. At the door, Mike turned to his brother. Jason, think about it properly. Sarah isn't to blame for anything. The one who started all this nonsense was you. The door closed. Jason stood in the middle of the living room, looking at the remains of the disastrous meal, the dirty plates, and the closed door. Then he looked at Sarah. She had returned to the sofa. She had opened her book to the page where she had put the bookmark and had resumed reading. Sarah, tell me, can we stop with this really? Let's go back to how we were. Jason, it's only been 3 days. Already giving up on the separate management you proposed yourself? I'm not giving up. It's just that I've realized this is wrong. What is wrong exactly? All this, that everyone eats on their own side, that everyone cooks their own. We are a family. We should do things together. Then, why did you propose separate management? Jason stayed quiet. You listened to your colleague, Miller, whose ex-wife took everything, and you listened to your mother, who gave you the idea, and you thought I was taking advantage of you, that I was wasting your money. Am I wrong? It's not exactly like that. It is exactly like that. You thought separate management would give you control, that if I spent only my money and you only yours, everyone happy. But you didn't think that separate management means separate lives. Individual responsibility in all aspects. Jason sat on the sofa and covered his face with his hands. I've been an idiot. Yes, you have, but you can fix it. He looked at her with hopeful eyes. Do you forgive me? It's too soon to talk about forgiveness. First, you have to truly understand what you've done. Sarah put down the book, got up, and went to the kitchen. She came back with her laptop, sat next to Jason, and opened the expense file. Look, these are our expenses from the last year, broken down by category, with all receipts and justifications. Jason looked at the numbers and his eyes opened wider and wider. Weekend meals for your family, $6,000 a year, just in food, without counting my time, nor electricity, nor water. I didn't know. Regular groceries for both, $6,000 a year. Bills, $2,400, $1,200 each. Cleaning products, $1,000. My clothes, $1,500. Gifts for both families, $2,000. Sarah showed him each category. Jason paled by the moment. In summary, of my $3,500 salary, almost everything went into family expenses. I had about $300 or $400 left. Sarah, and you, of your $2,500 salary, contributed to the joint account about $1,200. The rest, more than $1,300, you spent on yourself, on your gadgets, your friends, on giving money to your mother. Where is the justice in that, Jason? Jason said nothing. Sarah closed the laptop. That's why I accepted separate management, so you would see how much I really contribute to our family. And what I receive in return, a criticism because the brisket isn't tender enough. She got up and left the laptop on the table. When you truly understand this, then we'll talk about forgiveness. Sarah went to her bedroom and closed the door. Jason remained sitting on the sofa, staring into the void. His head was spinning. He really didn't know. He hadn't calculated. He hadn't thought. He took for granted that Sarah cooked, cleaned, took care of everything. He thought it was normal, what it should be. But it turned out he was simply taking advantage, living comfortably thanks to her, without paying the price for everything she did. And on top of that, he had the nerve to think he was maintaining her. That night, he tried to make dinner. He boiled some spaghetti, dumped jarred sauce on it, and mixed it. It was inedible. He forced himself to eat it, bite by bite. Sarah came out of her room and made herself a steak with vegetables. Afterward, she ate in the kitchen, he in the living room. They didn't speak. Sunday passed in a heavy silence. Jason tried to clean the apartment, but didn't know where to start. He vacuumed the living room and ran out of steam. He tried to start a load of laundry, but chose the wrong cycle and shrank the clothes. Sarah did her things, worked on the laptop, read, watched shows, ignoring her husband. In the afternoon, his mother called him. He went to the balcony. It was a long and difficult conversation. Linda demanded, accused, pressured. Jason tried to explain himself, but she didn't listen. When he came back from the balcony, his face was gray. Sarah saw him, but said nothing. They slept each on one edge of the bed. Jason tossed and turned all night, thinking. Sarah slept peacefully, with a clear conscience. Monday. A new week started. Jason left for work early without breakfast. He didn't know how to cook, and buying breakfast at a cafe every day was expensive. Sarah ate her oatmeal with berries, drank her coffee, and went to the office. The day was busy. Another problem with the Chinese supplier. Paperwork filed wrong or something. Sarah was on the phone for 3 hours writing emails, coordinating until she solved it. At noon, she ate in the company cafeteria. She ran into a colleague from another department, and they talked about work and the weather. Sarah didn't say a word about her domestic problems. She didn't like airing her dirty laundry. In the evening, Jason arrived late. Sarah had already eaten. She had made seafood pasta. He went to the kitchen and opened the fridge. On the bottom shelf were his provisions. Sliced bread and a piece of sausage. Nothing else. He had forgotten to do the groceries. He grabbed the sliced bread again, took a bite, and chewed the dry bread, washing it down with water. Sarah was sitting in the living room watching a movie and didn't even turn around. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, the same. Jason ate what he could, in the company cafeteria. He bought something on the way home, or simply chewed bread. In 1 week, he had spent over $200 on food. His clothes were wrinkled because he didn't know how to iron. The house was a mess because he didn't know how to clean. Dishes piled up in the sink, and he washed them haphazardly. Sarah, meanwhile, lived her life, cooked delicious dishes, went to work, met with her friends. She was fine, even very fine. Friday evening, Jason couldn't take it anymore. He got home and saw Sarah in the kitchen. She was preparing duck à l'orange. It smelled incredibly good. He sat at the table and watched her make magic in front of the stove. Finally, he said quietly, "Sarah, can we talk a moment?" She turned around. "I'm listening." "I'm sorry. I really am sorry. I've realized everything. That I was wrong. That I was selfish. That I didn't value you." "Go on." "I want us to go back to how we were before, with a joint budget, a normal life, without this horrible separation." Sarah turned off the burner. She dried her hands on a cloth and sat opposite Jason. "Okay, but with conditions. Whatever they are. I will continue keeping a record of all expenses. You can see at any moment where the money goes. Total transparency." "Agreed." "Weekend meals with your family will be twice a month, not every week, and we'll discuss it beforehand." "Agreed." "No filling Tupperware. We cook to eat here, not to take home." "Agreed." "You will never bring advice from people like Miller to our family problems again. If we have a problem, you talk to me, not to others." "I promise." Sarah looked at him in silence for a moment. "And lastly, you will acknowledge that I am not a kept woman you feed. I am your partner on equal terms. I contribute to our family no less than you, but more." "I understand. I really understand." "Then, agreed." We returned to the joint budget. Jason jumped up to hug her. Sarah stopped him with a gesture. "One moment. I forgive you, but I don't forget. The words you said then, that you were sick of supporting me, will stay with me forever." "Sarah, I didn't mean it seriously." "I know, but the words were said. And now I will always remember that in a moment of crisis, instead of supporting me, you accused me. And that has changed something between us forever." She got up, returned to the stove, and continued preparing dinner. But now, not just for her, but for both. Jason remained sitting at the table, realizing that something important in their relationship had broken, and that the one who had broken it had been him. Since that conversation in the kitchen, a week has passed. Jason has begged to return to the joint budget, but Sarah hasn't agreed. She simply looks at him with cold eyes and says, "It's still early, Jason. You still haven't fully understood what you've done." He tries to convince her, but she is inflexible. Separate management continues, with all its consequences. Jason keeps surviving on pre-cooked food and cheap company menus. His clothes are wrinkled, his part of the apartment dirty. He spends much more money than before on living, but his quality of life has worsened. Sarah, on the other hand, thrives, eats gourmet dishes, wears impeccable clothes, seems relaxed and satisfied. Her part of the apartment shines clean. She saves money, meets friends, goes to restaurants. The Monday of the second week, his mother calls Jason. "Jason, Saturday we're coming. We want to see you guys." He freezes, phone to his ear. "Mom, what if you don't come? The situation is a bit complicated." "What situation? Can't we go to our son's house? We'll go at lunchtime, as always." "Mom, but—" "No buts. See you Saturday." And she hangs up. Jason sits there looking at the black screen. What to do? Sarah isn't going to cook, no way, and he doesn't know how to cook for so many people. That night, he tries to talk to his wife. "Sarah, Saturday, my parents and my brother with his family are coming." She, reading a book, doesn't lift her head. "I know. I heard the call yesterday." "Are you going to help me?" "No." "Sarah, please, just this once." She closes the book and looks at him. "Jason, we have separate management. Your family, your responsibility. It's fair, but I don't know how to cook." "Learn or order food or buy something ready-made. There are options." "Sarah, no." "Jason, I mean it. You wanted separate management, you got it. Live with it." She gets up and goes to the bedroom. Jason stays on the sofa clutching his head. He spends the whole week stressed, thinking what to buy, what to cook, how to organize a meal for 7 people. He looks for recipes online, but they all seem complicated. Thursday, finally, he makes a decision. He goes into an expensive restaurant near his work and orders the food for Saturday for delivery. Salads, main courses, desserts, all quality. In nice packaging. He pays $285, almost a tenth of his salary on a single meal. But he has no other choice. Friday night, he tells Sarah. I ordered food from a restaurant. They'll bring it tomorrow at lunchtime. Well done. Smart. You really aren't going to cook? No. Will you not even sit at the table? No. Why? It's your food, with your family. I haven't been invited. Sarah, they're going to think you're sick. Let them think what they want. Jason realizes it's useless to insist. He goes to bed with a heavy heart and sleeps poorly. Saturday starts horribly. Sarah gets up early, showers, dresses, and announces she's going to spend the day at a friend's house. I'll be back at night. You're doing it on purpose, right? Jason explodes. No, I simply don't want to participate in this circus. Good luck. And she leaves. Jason is left alone. At 11, the restaurant calls him. Excuse us, we've had a problem with a supplier and we cannot fulfill your order. We will refund the money within 3 days. Jason's blood runs cold. What to do? His parents will arrive in 2 hours. He grabs his jacket and runs to the nearest supermarket. He wanders the aisles not knowing what to buy. He ends up grabbing pasta, jarred sauce, sliced bread, butter, the cheapest stuff. He barely has money left. He has drained his paycheck and there's a week left until the next one. He goes back home and opens a package of pasta. He stands in the kitchen not knowing what to do. You have to cook it. But how? How much water? How much time? He tries. He puts water to boil in a pot and dumps the pasta, but miscalculates the proportions. Too little water. The pasta turns into a brick stuck to the bottom of the pot. Jason, cursing, throws it all in the sink. He looks at the clock. It's 12:40. His parents will arrive in 20 minutes. Panic sets in. He grabs the last package of pasta he bought. He opens it and pours the dry pasta onto plates. Just like that. Raw. He puts the 3 plates with dry pasta on the table. Nothing else. Exactly at 1 the doorbell rings. Jason opens. At the door are Linda with her bag of Tupperware, Mike, Ashley, and the 3 kids. His mother-in-law enters first, wrinkling her nose. How weird! It doesn't smell like anything. Sarah didn't cook? Come in, is all Jason manages to say. They enter the living room, take off their coats. The kids run to their room. Linda looks at the empty table. And the food? Isn't it ready yet? It's ready. I'll bring it now. Jason goes to the kitchen, grabs the 3 plates, comes back and puts them on the table. Everyone stares at the plates. On each one, there is a handful of dry pasta, uncooked, raw, hard, simply dumped from the package. A deathly silence falls. Mike is the first to speak. What is this? Jason, red as a tomato, says nothing. Linda gets up, approaches the table, picks up a macaroni and breaks it with her fingers. This is raw. At that moment, Sarah appears from the hallway. She hadn't gone to her friend's house. She had been in the bedroom the whole time, waiting. The family turns. Sarah stands in the doorway, with a calm and barely perceptible smile. And then Linda screams, "But what is this? What has this boy served us to eat?" Sarah walks slowly to the table, looks at the plates of dry pasta, and looks up at her in-laws. And when my in-laws, who as always came to eat for free until they burst, entered the kitchen, they screamed in horror at the scene they found. She paused meaningfully. There was the dry pasta he had prepared for them, without even cooking. Linda is stunned. Did you do this on purpose? Eat. We manage money separately, right? Says Sarah calmly. She turns to Jason. Is pasta all you had left from your shopping? Well, enjoy. And don't spill anything. Silence of the grave. Linda's mouth is open. Mike is doubled over. Can't tell if laughing or choking. Ashley covers her face with her hands. Jason is white as a sheet. Sarah, you hadn't left? No, I was in the bedroom, watching you suffer. Waiting for this moment. Why? To show you and them, she sweeps her gaze over her in-laws, so everyone finally understands what managing money separately really means. Linda recovers her voice. Are you mocking us? We are your family. No, cuts Sarah coldly. You are not my family. You are Jason's family. And you were the ones who proposed separate management, remember? Linda, 3 weeks ago, you told me how comfortable and modern it was. I didn't mean this. Then what did you mean? That I continue spending my money on you and you continue coming to eat for free? That doesn't work like that. We don't eat for free. We are family. A family that comes every Saturday to take Tupperware full of food. A family that in the last 3 years has eaten $6,000 of my money and has never said thank you. Linda blushes and pales at the same time. I didn't know. Of course you didn't know. You weren't interested. You came, ate, criticized, and took the Tupperware. I put the money, the time, the effort, and in exchange, I received a critique about the tenderness of the brisket. Sarah is right, says Ashley quietly. We have taken advantage of her kindness. Mike nods. Mom, Sarah is right. Linda looks at her son, her daughter-in-law, and the plates of dry pasta. This is a humiliation. Yes, nods Sarah. The same thing I felt when Jason told me he was sick of supporting me. It was a humiliation. When the person who gives everything is accused of freeloading, she turns to Jason. Do you see now what it is to feed your relatives with your own money? Did you spend your last cent on a restaurant that scammed you and then didn't have enough to buy anything but cheap pasta that you didn't even know how to cook? Jason, head down, says nothing. And I did that for 3 years, every Saturday. Buying expensive products, cooking for 5 hours, setting the table, listening to criticism, and watching your mother fill Tupperware assuming it was normal, that we were a family. Sarah leans closer to the table, picks up a macaroni, and spins it between her fingers. But turns out we weren't a family. Turns out I was just a cook and a free maid my husband was taking advantage of. Sarah, I'm sorry, says Jason finally. I've been a complete idiot. I didn't think. I didn't understand. And now you understand? Yes, I understand. Please, forgive me. He kneels right there, on the floor, in front of everyone, clasps his hands in a pleading gesture. Forgive me. Let's go back to how we were. I've realized everything. I will value you. I won't listen to Miller. I won't listen to my mother's advice. Just forgive me, please. Sarah looks down at him for a long time. Everyone holds their breath, waiting for her answer. Get up, Jason. He gets up. His face is streaked with tears, eyes red. I forgive you. He exhales a sigh of relief and moves toward her, but she stops him with her hand. But with conditions, very important conditions. Anything. We return to the joint budget, but I will keep a perfect record of all expenses. You can see at any moment where the money goes. Agreed. Weekend meals with your family will be once a month, no more, and we'll talk about it beforehand. Agreed. No filling Tupperware. We cook to eat here. If you want to take something, you pay separately. Linda makes a gesture of protest, but Mike puts a hand on her shoulder. Mom, shut up! It's fair! Jason nods. Agreed. Don't consult our family problems with outsiders again. If you have a problem, you talk directly to me. Promise me. Sarah pauses and says the most important thing. And lastly, you will acknowledge that I am not a kept woman, but your partner on equal terms. That I contribute to our family no less than you, but more. And you will value it. Jason, crying, nods. Yes, I acknowledge it. You do everything for our family. You are the best. I'm sorry. Sarah sighs. Okay. Starting Monday, we return to the joint budget. Jason runs to hug her. She reciprocates, but without passion. She pats him on the back and pulls away. She turns to her in-laws. Linda, I don't hold a grudge, but in the future, please, don't give advice if you don't know the whole situation. You almost destroyed my family. Her mother-in-law nods, ashamed. I'm sorry, Sarah. I didn't think it would come to this. I know, that's why I forgive you. Ashley approaches and hugs Sarah. Thank you for feeding us all these years. We've been ungrateful. Mike also approaches. Sarah, you're the best. You taught us all a lesson. Hard, but fair. The kids run out of their room and see the adults standing in the middle of the living room. The little girl looks at the table. Where is the food? Why are there only sticks on the plates? Everyone looks at each other, and through the tension breaks a sincere laughter. Sarah goes to the kitchen. I'll make something quick. The kids aren't to blame for the adults' nonsense. She takes provisions from her padlocked cabinet. In half an hour, she prepares French omelets with vegetables, cuts bread, puts out cheese, and cold cuts. A simple meal, but substantial. Everyone sits at the table. They eat in silence, each lost in their thoughts. The atmosphere is strange. Not hostile, but not warm either. Transitional. After eating, the family doesn't stay long. They get ready to leave. Saying goodbye, Linda hugs Sarah. Thank you for forgiving us, Jason and me. You are a strong woman. I just don't like putting up with injustice. You do well. They leave. The door closes. Jason and Sarah are left alone. He looks at her with guilty eyes. Sarah, tell me, have you really forgiven me? Yes, Jason. I have forgiven you. Then, will everything go back to being like before? Sarah stays silent. No, it won't go back to being like before. It will be different. Worse? Just different. When you said those words, something broke between us. Something important. Trust. Intimacy. The certainty that we were a team. Can it be fixed? I don't know. Time will tell. Jason nods. He knows he has been given a second chance. The last one. And if he wastes it, there won't be any more. They start clearing the table in silence, each busy with their task. Life continues, but it's no longer the same. A month has passed since that memorable Saturday lunch. Jason has genuinely changed, becoming attentive and helpful, while Linda now visits respectfully once a month without her plastic containers. On the surface, life has returned to normal, but Sarah knows that something inside has irrevocably shifted. She continues to deposit money into her secret savings account, her Plan B fund, because when she looks at Jason, she no longer sees the partner she trusted blindly, but the man capable of betrayal. She has forgiven, but she hasn't forgotten. The scar of his words remains, a constant reminder that keeps her emotionally distant. He thinks he won me back. He doesn't realize he's hugging a ghost. Sometimes the hardest part of a tragedy isn't the explosion, but the silence that follows when you realize you're still standing in the wreckage. This is a work of fiction, yet it mirrors the silent fractures found in so many real homes, where love doesn't always die with a bang, but with a quiet, calculated withdrawal of the heart.